The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Hello and welcome. I'm really glad you're here with me today. Let me paint you a picture from 500 years ago in a small Italian town. Picture a crowded public square, thick with tension and whispered conversations. Right in the center, there's a gruesome display that nobody can look away from. A man named Ramiro d'Orco lies there, but not in one piece. His body rests on one side of a wooden block, his severed head on the other, with a blood-stained axe placed deliberately between them. The crowd's reaction is fascinating. There's shock, yes, but also this strange sense of relief, almost satisfaction. Here's the thing. Just a few weeks earlier, Ramiro was the most terrifying person anyone in that region had ever met. He was a government minister with an iron fist and a reputation for ruthless cruelty. His boss, the cunning Duke Cesare Borgia, had sent him to clean up a territory drowning in crime and chaos. And Ramiro did exactly that. Through swift, brutal methods, he crushed the lawlessness and brought order to the province. But here's where it gets interesting. His cruelty worked too well, in a way. Sure, people stopped committing crimes, but they also started to really hate him. The province was orderly but seething with resentment. So Duke Borgia pulled off something absolutely brilliant and chilling. One morning, everyone woke up to find the very man who had terrorized them, now executed in the town square. With one savage act, Borgia accomplished something extraordinary. He'd used Ramiro to do all the dirty work of establishing order, then eliminated him, to show the people that the cruelty wasn't coming from the top. It was all that harsh minister's fault, you see. The crowd felt satisfied, even vindicated. It was terrifying in its genius, really. Watching all of this unfold, taking careful notes on men like Borgia, was a sharp political mind named Niccolo Machiavelli. For years, he'd been a top diplomat for the Republic of Florence, traveling across Europe, negotiating deals, and getting a front-row seat to how power actually works in the real world. He was living his best life, right at the center of it all. Then everything came crashing down. The powerful Medici family stormed back into Florence, overthrew the government, and Machiavelli, at 43 years old, lost absolutely everything. He was accused of conspiracy, thrown in prison, and tortured. Eventually they released him, but sent him into exile on his small family farm outside the city. Stripped of his influence, his purpose, and his connection to the political world he lived for, he felt completely lost. But here's this beautiful, almost sad detail. Every evening, he would take off his dusty farm clothes, put on the formal robes from his diplomatic days, and retreat to his study. There, surrounded by his beloved books, he would reflect on everything he'd learned from years of first-hand political experience and from studying ancient history. It was in this desperate state that he wrote a short book. This wasn't some pie-in-the-sky philosophy about how the world should be. It was raw, practical, and shockingly honest about how to gain and keep power. He wrote it as a gift to the new Medici ruler, Lorenzo, hoping it might prove his worth and win him back a position in the world he missed so desperately. In the dedication, he wrote about the keen and unremitting cruelty of fortune that he'd suffered so unfairly. That little book was The Prince. Today I want to walk you through the timeless and often uncomfortable wisdom packed into those pages. We're not just going to summarize what it says. We're going to understand why it's remained one of the most influential and controversial books ever written. Here's my promise to you. By the end of our time together, you'll see the world of power, leadership, and human nature not as we wish it were, but as it actually is. And that, my friend, is genuinely priceless knowledge. To understand Machiavelli, the first thing we need to do is toss out the fairy tale version of how leadership works. So many thinkers before him wrote beautifully about how leaders should be: virtuous, kind, generous, and always truthful. They constructed these gorgeous imaginary kingdoms that existed only in their minds. Machiavelli looked at all that and basically said, "That's lovely poetry, but it's not reality. And if you try to live up to some perfect standard of goodness in a world full of people who absolutely will not do the same, you're going to get destroyed." This is the bedrock of everything he teaches. He says the gap between how we actually live and how we ought to live is so enormous that a leader who focuses only on the ought is learning the path to their own destruction, not their survival. Now, this isn't him saying be evil, it's him saying be a realist. It's essential for a prince who wants to keep their position to learn how to be other than good, and to use that knowledge when circumstances demand it. And what is the reality of leadership? It's complicated. Machiavelli explains that inheriting a kingdom is relatively straightforward. If you're a hereditary prince, born into a family that's ruled for generations, your job is comparatively easy. People are used to your family's rule. You've got established traditions working in your favor, and as long as you don't do anything spectacularly stupid, you can probably keep things rolling without too much drama. The real challenge, he says, comes when you're a new prince, the leader who rises to power through their own efforts, or takes over new territory. That's where the danger really lives. A new leader has no deep roots of loyalty. People are always ready to switch allegiances, hoping the next guy will treat them better. Every eye is watching, waiting to see if you're strong or weak. Machiavelli saw two main paths to becoming a new prince. You can rise through your own abilities, your own hard work and cleverness, what he calls merit, or you can be handed power through luck, or by riding someone else's coattails, what he calls fortune. Think of it this way. Someone who builds a business from the ground up, with their own sweat and ingenuity, has a brutal climb. They face enormous challenges at the beginning, but once they succeed, they know every detail of their company. They've earned genuine respect from their team. They've built something solid. Machiavelli says those who acquire power through their own merit have great difficulty getting it, but they hold on to it with relative ease. He points to legendary figures like Moses, Cyrus, and Romulus, who faced incredible odds but built things that lasted for generations because their foundations were rock solid. Now contrast that with someone who wins the lottery and buys a company. They acquire it overnight with almost no effort. It seems amazingly easy. But now they actually have to run it. They don't understand the business, they don't have the loyalty of the employees, and they're completely dependent on the same luck that got them there. Machiavelli says those who become princes through good fortune do so with little trouble, but they struggle enormously to keep their position. They're like a tree planted without roots. The first strong wind will knock it right over. His prime example is the man we started with, Cesare Borgia. Borgia was genuinely brilliant, but his princedom was handed to him through the favorable circumstances of his father being Pope Alexander VI. He rose like a shooting star across the Italian sky. But when his father died, when his good fortune ran out, his power crumbled. Despite all his clever and ruthless maneuvering, his foundation was built on someone else's power, and when that support vanished, he fell hard. So for any leader, the first lesson is crystal clear. Build your foundation on what you can actually control, your own skills, your own team, your own efforts. Relying on luck or borrowing someone else's power is like building a house on sand. But what skills does a leader actually need? This brings us to one of Machiavelli's most famous and powerful ideas. A prince must learn to be both a man and a beast. Leadership means you have to deal with other people, often in conflict. There are two ways of doing this: by law, which is the way of civilized humans, and by force, which is the way of animals. A good leader knows how to use laws, reason, and diplomacy. But often, that's simply not enough. When reason fails, a leader must be prepared to use force. But it's not just about raw strength. Machiavelli says a prince must learn from two specific animals, the lion and the fox. The lion is powerful. He's strong and can frighten off the wolves. This represents a leader's strength, their military might, their capacity to command respect through force. But the lion, for all his impressive strength, isn't particularly clever. He can't see the traps and snares laid for him. The fox, on the other hand, is cunning. She's not strong, but she's incredibly smart. She can spot a trap from a mile away and knows exactly how to avoid it. This represents a leader's diplomacy, their cleverness, their ability to navigate complex situations and see through deception. But the fox can't defend herself from wolves when they attack. A leader, Machiavelli insists, must be both. You need to be a lion to intimidate your enemies, and a fox to avoid being outsmarted by them. If you're only a lion, you'll eventually walk straight into a trap. If you're only a fox, you'll be torn apart the moment a stronger enemy shows up. You have to combine the strength of one with the cunning of the other. This leads him to his most controversial piece of advice. A prudent prince neither can nor should keep his word when keeping it would hurt him. Now, before you think this is a license to lie about everything, listen to his reasoning. It's praiseworthy, he says, for a prince to be a person of their word. In an ideal world, you should always be honest. But, he reminds us, we don't live in an ideal world. He says that if all people were good, this advice would be terrible. But, because people are dishonest and won't keep faith with you, you're not bound to keep faith with them. A leader's first duty isn't to a promise, it's to the survival and well-being of the state. If keeping a promise would lead to the destruction of your kingdom, or if the reasons you made that promise no longer exist, then a wise prince must know how to break it. But, he adds, you must be clever about it, like a fox. You must know how to disguise your reasons and be skillful in appearing one way while acting another. This is harsh. It's uncomfortable to hear. But look at history, Machiavelli says. The princes who accomplished great things are the ones who didn't put much stock in keeping their word, but knew how to cleverly manipulate people. Those who relied only on being honest lions were often defeated. This idea of balancing opposing qualities is at the heart of his entire philosophy. And it brings us to his most famous question: is it better for a leader to be loved or to be feared? His answer is nuanced. Ideally, he says, you'd want to be both. Who wouldn't want people to both love and fear them? But he recognizes that these two things are really difficult to have together. So if you must choose one, it's much safer to be feared than to be loved. Why? His reasoning is based on a pretty grim view of human nature. He says that people, in general, are thankless, fickle, false, eager to avoid danger, and greedy for gain. Love, he explains, is held together by a sense of obligation. And because people are flawed, they'll break that obligation whenever it's in their own interest to do so. Your people might love you when times are good and you're giving them benefits, but the moment you need them to make a sacrifice, that love can evaporate instantly. Fear, however, is different. Fear is bound by the threat of punishment, and that threat never really goes away. It's a more reliable, more consistent motivator. But, and this is the part people so often overlook, Machiavelli draws a very clear line between being feared and being hated. A prince should inspire fear in such a way that if he doesn't win love, he at least avoids hatred. Hatred is what sparks rebellion. It's the one thing that will unite your people against you. So how do you avoid being hated? He gives one simple, powerful rule: don't touch the property or the women of your subjects. As long as you leave their honor and their possessions alone, he says, most people will live contentedly. He then offers one of the most cynical and insightful observations ever written. People will sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. It's a chilling thought, but it reveals a deep understanding of human psychology. Being feared means being respected as a powerful authority whose rules have real consequences. Being hated means being seen as a predator who steals what's most precious to people. A wise prince understands this crucial difference and never crosses that line. So a prince must be a realist, a lion and a fox, and feared but not hated. What else? He must be completely focused on war. For Machiavelli, this is non-negotiable. A prince, he writes, should have no other object or thought, nor acquire skill in anything except war and its organization and discipline. This is the one skill that's absolutely expected of a ruler. In fact, he argues that princes lose their states when they think more about pleasures than about military affairs. Being unarmed makes you despised, and there's nothing more dangerous for a leader than being held in contempt. But what does focusing on war actually mean? It means having your own army, loyal to you. Here, he gives another critical lesson. He warns strongly against two types of soldiers: mercenaries and auxiliaries. Mercenaries are soldiers you hire to fight for you. They are, in his blunt words, useless and dangerous. Their only motivation is money. They have no real loyalty to you or your cause. In peacetime, they'll drain your resources, and in wartime, they'll either be cowardly or desert you for whoever pays more. Italy's ruin, he says, came from relying on these hired swords for far too long. Even worse than mercenaries are auxiliaries. These are troops belonging to another ruler that you borrow to help you fight. These soldiers might be very effective for their own master, but they're always harmful to whoever borrowed them. Why? If they lose, you're finished. But if they win, you become their prisoner. You're now in their debt, and they're armed and in your territory. You've simply traded one enemy for a more powerful and far more dangerous one. The lesson is stark and clear. A wise prince never fights with someone else's army. He must build his own military force, made up of his own citizens and subjects. These are the only soldiers who'll be truly loyal, because they're fighting for their own homes, their own families, and their own prince. A national army is the true foundation of a state's security. Without it, a prince is completely at the mercy of luck. This constant focus on military matters isn't just for wartime. A prince must train his mind and body even during peace. He should be an avid hunter, to toughen his body and to learn the landscape of his country, the mountains, the valleys, the rivers. This knowledge is vital, because knowing your own land teaches you how to defend it. He must also train his mind by reading history. He should study the actions of great leaders, see how they conducted their wars, examine the causes of their victories and defeats, so he can copy the successful strategies and avoid the failures. A leader who doesn't learn from the past is doomed to repeat its mistakes. Even with the best army and the sharpest military mind, a prince still faces dangers from within. He's surrounded by people, and people are complicated. Two of the biggest internal threats a leader faces are contempt and flattery. We've talked about avoiding hatred. Avoiding contempt is equally important. A prince is despised, Machiavelli says, when he's seen as fickle, frivolous, effeminate, cowardly, or irresolute. In modern terms, a leader is despised when they're seen as inconsistent, shallow, weak, cowardly, or unable to make decisions. A leader must project an image of greatness, courage, and strength. The other trap is flattery. Any organization, just like a royal court, is full of people who will tell the leader exactly what they think he wants to hear. This is poison that can corrupt even the wisest ruler. So how do you avoid it? Machiavelli warns that if you just tell everyone to always speak the truth to you, you'll lose their respect. It creates chaos. Instead, he offers a middle path. A prudent prince should choose a small group of wise advisors. He should give only them the freedom to speak the truth to him, and only on subjects he asks about. He should ask them about everything, listen to their opinions patiently, but in the end he must make his own decision and stick to it firmly. This is a critical point about leadership. He says a prince who isn't wise himself can't be well advised. Good advice doesn't make a prince wise. A wise prince is what makes good advice possible, because he has the judgment to seek it out and the wisdom to use it correctly. After all this strategy, all this psychology, all this effort, is success guaranteed? No. And this is where Machiavelli becomes almost poetic. He acknowledges there's a force in human affairs that we can't fully control. He calls it fortune. He knows that many people believe everything is predetermined by God and fortune, and that we have no power to change our fate. He admits that sometimes, seeing the wild upheavals in the world, he's tempted to think the same way. But he can't accept that our free will is completely erased. He concludes that fortune may control about half of our actions, but she leaves the other half, or perhaps a little less, to us. And then he gives us one of his most brilliant metaphors. Fortune, he says, is like a raging river. When it floods, it washes away everything in its path: trees, houses, people. Nobody can resist it in that moment. But, he says, that doesn't mean that when the weather is calm, people can't prepare. They can build dams, levees, and channels to manage the river's power, so that when the flood comes, its force is either directed safely away or is far less destructive. So it is with fortune. She shows her power where there's no organized strength to resist her. A wise leader, like a wise engineer, uses times of peace and stability to build up defenses, the army, the laws, the alliances, so that when bad luck strikes, he isn't swept away. But there's one more thing about fortune. He says she's like a woman, and as such, she's more often won over by people who are bold, impetuous, and audacious than by those who are cautious and timid. He concludes that it's better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune favors the brave. This is Machiavelli's final call to action. He ends The Prince with a passionate plea to the Medici family, to whom the book is dedicated. He tells them that Italy is broken, beaten, and leaderless, waiting for someone to save it. He tells them that this is their moment. The opportunity is ripe. He urges them to take up this cause, to build a national army, and to liberate Italy from foreign invaders. After all the cold calculation and brutal realism, the book ends with a blaze of hope and patriotism. It's a reminder that Machiavelli wasn't just a cold analyst of power. He was a man who loved his country desperately and wanted to see it strong and united. The whole book, in a way, is a blueprint for that salvation. It's a guide on how to build a leader strong enough, cunning enough, and realistic enough to succeed in a world that doesn't play by the rules. So what do we do with this book today? For 500 years, the name Machiavelli has been associated with everything evil and corrupt. Machiavellian has become shorthand for cunning, deceptive, and ruthless. But to dismiss the book as merely a handbook for tyrants is to completely miss its profound and enduring brilliance. The Prince isn't a book about morality. It operates on a completely different axis, the axis of effectiveness. The question it asks isn't what is good, but what actually works. And it forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth, that the actions required to maintain power and ensure stability are sometimes in direct conflict with our personal sense of right and wrong. This is why the book feels so remarkably modern. The dilemmas Machiavelli describes are timeless. Think of a company leader who has to lay off 500 loyal employees to save the company from bankruptcy, thereby preserving the jobs of thousands more. Is that a cruel act or a merciful one? Machiavelli would say it's a necessary one. A leader who uses a few decisive examples to prevent disorder will in the end be more merciful than one who, from too much leniency, allows things to spiral into chaos and bloodshed. Think of a political leader negotiating a peace treaty with a hostile nation. Can they afford to be completely transparent, or must they be a fox, using cunning and veiled threats to secure the best outcome for their people? The lessons of the Prince aren't just for princes. They're for anyone in a position of leadership, or anyone who wants to understand how the world of power actually operates. It teaches us to be pragmatic, to prepare for the worst, and to understand the often unpleasant realities of human nature. So how can we apply this ancient wisdom to our own lives? I believe there are 3 simple, practical takeaways from our time with Machiavelli. First, build your foundation on merit, not fortune. In your own life, what are you relying on? Are your skills, your knowledge, your discipline, your own national army strong? Or are you depending on luck, on other people, on things outside your control? Take an honest look at your foundations. The strongest position is always the one you've built yourself. Second, cultivate your own small council. Who are the few people in your life you can trust to tell you the unvarnished truth, not just what you want to hear? Machiavelli's advice on avoiding flatterers is one of the most practical leadership lessons ever written. Find those people, give them permission to be honest with you, and actually listen to them. But remember, the final decision is always yours. A leader listens to advice but isn't controlled by it. And third, prepare for the raging river. Fortune or bad luck will will come for all of us eventually. The question isn't if the river will flood, but when. What dams and levees can you build in your life right now, while the weather is calm? This could be your savings, learning a valuable skill, strengthening your relationships, or taking care of your health. A wise person uses good times to prepare for difficult ones. Don't wait for the storm to figure out how to build a shelter. The Prince isn't a comfortable read. It holds a mirror up to the world and to ourselves, and it doesn't shy away from the darker parts of what it shows. It's a book about power, written by a man who had lost everything, and who understood, perhaps better than anyone, what it truly takes to lead and to endure. That was our journey through The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. We've explored the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real power of this book emerges when you sit with it yourself. It's in those quiet moments when a particular story or a brutally honest phrase connects with your own experiences in a way you didn't expect. This overview is designed to help you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity or challenged your view of the world, I really encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning history. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see leadership, strategy, and even human nature itself. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this discussion valuable, I'd be so grateful if you would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the world's most successful minds. Let's keep learning and growing together. Thank you for listening.